We are looking at three characters from Esther 3 to 4. There's Esther, there's Mordecai, and there's Haman, the bad guy. And we're going to spend most of our time on the bad guy before we look at the good guys, because the theme for today is seeing God in difficult circumstances. That is, when all we can see is the problem, all we see is the evil, the bad guys. The question is, where is God? Where are the good guys? So we are looking for God, but we're starting with the bad guy. Well, we're beginning with this guy called Haman. And this guy, Haman, he gets a promotion. In chapter 3, verse 1, Theresa May's just stepped down as PM here in the UK. Imagine Haman becomes prime minister. Chapter 3 and verse 1, after these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than all of the other nobles. So think prime minister, think president, a position higher than all the other nobles. And verse 2, all the officials have to kowtow to him. They have to literally bow down to him whenever they see him. Verse 2, all the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. So everyone had to do this, everyone did this, except for this guy called Mordecai. Verse 2 again, but Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. So there's this big man on campus, Haman. There's everyone kowtowing to him, everyone respecting him, except one guy called Mordecai. And today we would have no problem with that. We'd say, stick it to the man, Mordecai. You the man. But notice his defiance, verse 3, it causes some problems. It causes confusion. They say, why do you disobey the king's command? They ask. Verse 4, day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they told Haman, the boss, they told the boss about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated. But for he had told them he was a Jew. Up to this point, there's actually no reason to dislike Haman. Yes, he has a promotion. Big deal. Everyone bows down to him. The king commanded this about him. But up to this point, if you're hating Haman, that's just prejudice on your part. That's our rebellious nature speaking out against Haman. It's not graciousness. But if I'm honest, I do personally have problems with Haman already, even at this point. Firstly, because if you were here last week, you would have seen Mordecai do a really amazing thing. He helped stop an assassination on the life of the king. But instead of promoting Mordecai, who saved the king, the king promotes Haman instead, right here in the beginning of chapter 3. Secondly, the king commands everyone to kowtow down to Haman, meaning this is compulsory, meaning you don't do this, you get into trouble. Which is why these busybodies, they tell the teacher about Mordecai, why do I have to do this if he doesn't have to do this? They're not happy to do this, but they're also not happy because Mordecai is not doing this with them. But also, we're told in verse 1 that Haman was an Agagite, the son of Agag. And that's important because back in chapter 2 and verse 5, Mordecai is described as the son of Kish. And that's like saying one's the son of the Autobots and the other is the son of the Decepticons. One's a Jedi, the other is a Sith. They're from two different groups, two different factions. And the connection goes back to Saul, son of Kish, and King Agag in 1 Samuel chapter 15. And they were enemies. And in fact, it goes even further back to Israel and the Amalekites, the descendants of the Agagites, who were bitter enemies in Exodus chapter 17. So they go way back. They go back as enemies. They go back as two different families, two different factions. Now this is important because it frames Haman's rather extreme reaction in verse 5. Because in verse 5, Haman, he doesn't just get angry, he gets even. He doesn't just take offense, he takes revenge. Verse 5. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Verse 6. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, all the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. What's he doing? No, he's using all his power, he's using all his influence, all his position to kill all the Jews. He wouldn't have been able to do this if he didn't have that power. He wouldn't be able to do this if he didn't have, that inside hatred inside of him. But the question is, how's he going to do this? Well, verse 7 begins with Haman casting lots. Verse 7, the poor, that is the lot, was cast in the presence of Haman to select a day and month. And this is the day and month to kill all the Jews. He's choosing this specific day, specific time. You could say he was superstitious. But it's almost as if Haman is saying, I'm going to do this evil thing. I'm going to take revenge. God, when's the best time to do this evil thing, to kill all the Jews? He's asking for a kind of blessing. He's looking for a most auspicious time to do this evil thing inside his heart. Notice the answer, verse 7. He gets an answer on the 12th month. The lot fell in the 12th month, which is the last possible daytime month of the year. And you would think that even that answer would be saying something to Haman, but no, it doesn't ring anything to him, and he just goes ahead with his plan. So verse 8. Verse 8, Haman goes to the king and he says this, I want to kill my enemies. No, he doesn't say that to the king. Instead, he says, there is a certain people, and notice he doesn't say who these people are. They're dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom, and they keep themselves separate. They're not sociable people. And he says, their customs are different from those of all the other people, meaning these guys are weird. And they do not obey the king's laws. These guys are troublemakers. And he ends by saying it's not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. So this builds up to verse 9, his plan. And what he says is, if it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. And, O king, I will give you 10,000 talents of silver into the king's administrators for the royal treasury. Meaning what? I'll give you a lot of money, millions of pounds in equivalent of those 10,000 talents of silver. To do what? To commit genocide. That's what he's saying. I'm paying you to do this. Now, I've called Haman a faraway enemy. And that's a strange description of an enemy. Because, if he's far away, he's all the way over there, how is he going to hurt me all the way over here? And the answer we see here in chapter 3 is pride. It's pride, it's power, it's position. Pride means, you offend me because of me. You've disrespected me. Don't you know who I am? And that's why I can hate a stranger, I can hate someone far away. It's not because you've done something wrong, but because of something that's inside me that you've offended, that you've disrespected. That's pride. And we also see power. Power in the form of money, in the form of influence, in the form of Haman's intellect, actually. He's a really smart guy. Which he uses not to do good, but to commit the evil inside his heart. Haman, he doesn't technically do anything evil in the chapter. Rather he takes out his checkbook and he pays for someone else to do the evil that's inside his heart. And that's power. That's the ability. That's what money allows you to do, to remotely do evil. That's inside your heart. Finally, there's position. Haman, he manipulates the king. He even bribes the king. And in his mind, I think, Haman thinks he's the king. I've got all this money, I can control the king. He's thinking, I'm the one who is in power. Essentially, he's saying, I am God. And that's position in Haman's mind. Verse 10, so the king, he took his signet ring from his finger, and he gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Verse 11, keep the money, the king said to Haman, and do with the people as you please. Meaning, I don't care. Just kill them. I don't care. He doesn't find out who these people are, why Haman hates them. He just says, do with them as you please. And even atheists have problem with a God like this, if God exists, and they should have such a problem because God should not be unconcerned with evil. And yet, the truth is, I am unconcerned. We are unconcerned with lots and lots of evil that goes on right in front of us. You see, that's how the chapter ends in verse 15. That's us. The king and Haman, they sat down to drink. But the rest of the city of Susa, they were bewildered. They were confused. The whole city was freaking out. What are these two guys doing up there in the palace? Well, what they're doing is having afternoon tea. More tea, Haman? Don't mind if I do. It probably wasn't tea, but you get the idea. That guards us, I think, from saying to people, Haman's the bad guy, don't be like Haman. Because when we have the power to do good, but we do evil instead, when we live in ignorance, we live in comfort and unconcern at the expense of the suffering, cries, and oppression of the people around us, we become Haman. We live like kings. And the only difference between us and Haman, it's the 10,000 talents of silver, it's the millions of pounds, it's that promotion, it's that opportunity. The only difference between us and Haman is power, is position. The pride is still there. I still think I'm number one. You guys, you should kowtow to me. And sometimes when you hear someone say, when I have the money, when I come into that opportunity, I will do that good. I will make that difference that I should always do. And you might do that good. I'm not saying you won't, but you might also do all that evil that you shouldn't do as well when you have that position and that money. And you see, we see this faraway enemy, and that's our first point. And the point is this, it's not so far after all, it's inside us. It's that same pride, it's that same evil that exists inside all of us. Secondly,